This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, thank you so much for listening. I am your host, Alex Masfer. Again, thank you so much for listening. Before I start talking anything sports, I want to remind you guys to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode, so you get those alerts on your phone, on your laptop, however you may be listening. And again, you always get those alerts so you never know when we, when you never miss when we drop an episode. So make sure you are subscribed to the podcast. Also, we would love to interact with you guys on social media more, so make sure you follow us on all those platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Again, we love to interact with you guys on there. You know, you give us the thoughts on the show, how we can improve, maybe what topics to talk about. We would love that. So again, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, make sure you follow us on all those platforms. Also, make sure to leave us a 5-star review as well on whatever podcast app or website you are listening to this on. That would also be greatly appreciated. I hope wherever you are and however you may be listening, you and your family are happy and they are healthy during these trying times. We have a fantastic show for you guys today. Later on in the show, I'm going to be talking about the New England Patriots again because a lot of their players have dropped out of the season due to health concerns with the coronavirus, as well as Joey Bosa getting a massive extension with the Los Angeles Chargers. I'll tell you what it means for the Chargers and why they need to really be better and step it up. I'm also going to get to an interesting Aaron Rodgers quote that came out today. He spoke at length about the Jordan Love draft pick that the Packers had. I'm going to talk about that later in the show as well. Make sure you stick around to the end of the episode. I've talked about this, I think, ever since I started working with this great program. I've said that there's a tier list when it comes to quarterbacks, elite tier, all-time player, guys who can't elevate teammates. I've talked about it at length. And I think The Athletic recently did something where they did a QB tier list of all their players, or all the quarterbacks in the league. I'm going to do that at the end of the episode, so stick around for that. I'll be giving you my QB tier list. That'll be a lot of fun. So that's at the end of the episode, so make sure you stick around for that. Again, my QB tier list. But first, I want to start off with some NBA basketball. Now, on the day you're listening to this which would be Thursday, so I'm recording this on Wednesday, tomorrow, on Thursday, when you're listening to this, is the first official day of the NBA coming back where games are actually counting, not scrimmages. Tomorrow we're going to have, or today, however you may be listening to this, it's going to be Jazz versus Pelicans and Lakers versus Clippers. I'm so excited to watch, and I'll talk about it at length in the following episode, I'm sure, as well as some other games that'll happen all throughout the weekend. But the NBA has always been a year-round thing, right? More so than other sports, I really do believe. I think football is really big during the season, has sort of some moments in the off-season. I think there's a lot of hype around the draft for about a month. Not as much free agency, but there is some hype around free agency. Specifically, there was at least this season because Tom Brady was obviously a free agent, which is a really big deal, something that has never happened before. Usually, a quarterback of that caliber is never, walking around on the open market. Baseball has its season, nothing really hype about in the off season. Hockey, same thing. Basketball has really mastered the off season and how much hype the off season brings with the draft, considering there's so much young talent in the NBA, people coming in and out. Zion Williamson last year, RJ Barrett, more guys like Anthony Edwards, James Wiseman coming out this year, LaMelo Ball as well. On top of that, the NBA more than any other sports has superstars moving to different teams on a different level. That it happens in football, but no other sport compares to superstars moving like it does in basketball. And the basketball, there's almost more talking points in the offseason than there are actually during the season. And the season is great as well. And what the NBA will do this coming weekend once the games start counting will be great as well. Also, shout out Adam Silver in the NBA. I really do believe Adam Silver might be the best commissioner in sports. 0 positive coronavirus tests in the bubble. People made fun of the bubble when it first happened, how it wasn't going to be good for the players, wasn't going to be entertaining. What if there was an outbreak? The NBA is starting up tomorrow or today, however you may be listening to this, and there's no positive cases inside the bubble. Absolutely phenomenal news. Shout out Adam Silver for that. But like I said, the NBA has really mastered the offseason and guys moving constantly. And even on this show, I've talked about a lot of speculation, Victor Oladipo and Bradley Beal being the 2 main ones, of guys who can leave. Now, with recent reports, I have 2 more players that I believe could potentially leave their teams. Those 2 players are Donovan Mitchell and Zach LaVine. Now, I talked about Zach LaVine a little bit last episode when it came to the New York Knicks, and I am going to talk about the Knicks because these 2 players I think the Knicks should really go after. And like I mentioned when the Knicks hired Tom Thibodeau to me doesn't scream player development head coach. He screams big, splash. Free agent head coach, let's get winning sooner rather than later. He's not the biggest player development coach like Jason Kidd or Mark Jackson is. Those are who I would have hired, like I mentioned in my last episode. But let's start off quickly with Zach LaVine. Now, Zach LaVine, I think, has a higher chance of leaving Chicago than Donovan Mitchell does of Utah. But here is what we have of Zach LaVine. So NBC Sports Chicago's Casey Johnson says LaVine is tired of losing and tired of a lot of things going on with the Bulls. Quote unquote, Zach is tired of losing and tired of having run-ins with his coach and tired of a lot of other things inside the Bulls organization. I think the most likely player to leave their current spot is Victor Oladipo. But number 2 is a close second is Zach LaVine. I'm going to put him ahead more of Bradley Beal's likely chance of leaving as well. Zach LaVine's a really good player. Zach LaVine almost has, 25 points a game, 45% from 3, uber athletic, one of the most athletic guys in the league, and he plays sort of a combo guard forward thing. I'd list him more as a shooting guard, and I think he's one of the most underrated players in the NBA. He is the best player on the Chicago Bulls and has kept them from being maybe not the worst team in the league, but in the middle of the pack. Now, the only problem with Zach LaVine is I don't believe Zach LaVine can be the best player on a championship team. Again, he's still young, though. I think he's only 24 or 25, so those things could obviously change. And when you're averaging 25 points a game, I think you could have the potential to become, the best player on a championship team. But Zach LaVine would be one hell of a B player to somebody else, right? I think Zach LaVine's on his way out of Chicago, and unlike some of these other players, I think Zach LaVine would be more lenient to go to a team like the New York Knicks, who isn't in a necessarily immediate winning situation. I think Zach LaVine, more than anything, more than maybe some of these other guys, just wants the hell out of Chicago and the hell away from Jim Boylen. Guys like Victor Oladipo, I think, want to leave because they don't think they can win, or he doesn't think he can win in Indiana and has a better chance elsewhere. Bradley Beal, if he would want out, again, I think it's because he doesn't think he can win in, Washington. It's not like a poor relationship with the Colts or a coach or the GM or things like that. It's different with Zach LaVine. He genuinely does not like the head coach there. He's had multiple run-ins with the head coach, Jim Boylen, and it's been a really hard and frustrating and fiery relationship. I think he wants out. Now, the New York Knicks is an interesting proposition. Again, I've talked about this before. I'll list some other teams as well. But the most interesting to me is the New York Knicks. Because I really do believe the New York Knicks are not the favorites to land these really big A-list superstars. Again, they went after KD and Kyrie, failed at that. They went after LeBron in 2010, failed at that. The only guy who's really chosen to be a New York Knick recently is Carmelo Anthony, who desperately wanted to play back in New York where he played in college at Syracuse, and he might actually be from New York. I'm not exactly positive. And again, he wanted to leave a small market in Denver to go to New York. That's not the mentality of the Knicks anymore. Again, KD and Kyrie chose the Nets, which is the other team and the other brand in New York, over the big Knicks, right? The Knicks do have some young faces that would entice a guy to go there. I don't think it's good enough to entice a guy, who is maybe later on in his career and maybe isn't in the worst situation in the world like Victor Oladipo. I don't think Victor Oladipo wants to downgrade from Indiana to New York. If you're going to go to the New York Knicks, it has to be an upgrade for the player, I think. And I think out of all these people who want to leave, I think the only one, maybe Bradley Beal, but more than Bradley Beal where it'd be an upgrade, is actually Zach LaVine, because I think he would have a better relationship with Tom Thibodeau than he does with Jim Boylen, going to a bigger market. Chicago and New York are both big markets, but obviously some people consider New York the mecca of basketball. And I really do believe that Zach LaVine would enjoy being the face of the New York Knicks, getting some more recognition around the NBA than he is currently in Chicago. Making those super athletic dunks in, Madison Square Garden would bring him a lot of attention as well. And again, I really just believe he just wants the hell out of Chicago and away from Jim Boylan. That makes a lot of sense to me. What would a trade package look like? I could see them throwing in some of their picks. I would highly consider, specifically this draft, the Knicks are going to get a top 5, maybe even top 3 pick. Unless it's the number 1 overall pick, because I do like a guy like Anthony Edwards and maybe even LaMelo Ball. They already have a center in Mitchell Robinson, so again, James Wiseman doesn't make sense for the Knicks. I would consider packaging that pick for Zach LaVine. Now, Chicago could use it because they could replace Zach LaVine with another guard, Anthony Edwards or LaMelo, to pair with Kobe White and go into a full rebuild as well with their other top pick. It wouldn't surprise me, if they could have, Anthony Edwards and James Wiseman. That would be good for Chicago. But for New York, if they could get a guy like Zach LaVine, that would put them back on the map. Zach LaVine would be a guy where a free agent would want to play with. Right, again, in that big 2021 free agency, Giannis Antetokounmpo, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, a ton of other guys are free agents that season, again in 2021. Now, Giannis is the big one, and everyone has said the New York Knicks desperately want to go after Giannis and have Giannis be the savior of basketball there in New York. Zach LaVine there would be Zach LaVine and Giannis would work a lot because of Zach LaVine's shooting and also his athletic ability as a guard. That would make a lot of sense. I think if the Knicks could start off again with a guy like Zach LaVine, that would make perfect sense. Some other teams that could potentially be interested, I think the Miami Heat could be really interested in Zach LaVine. However, I think they're more focused on Victor Oladipo and Bradley Beal. Some other teams as well. The Brooklyn Nets, another team, they're looking for a third player potentially. And there's also just a lot of other teams that could potentially sweep in and try to get some of their young stars help. Atlanta makes a lot of sense to me. Potentially even Memphis to try to get a guard play to go with John Morant. And also, the Phoenix Suns make a lot of sense to me as well, and the Sacramento Kings. Teams that have a lot of young talent and just might be willing to give up some of their high picks to get a guy like Zach LaVine to pair with their already young superstars. They make a lot of sense to me for Zach LaVine. I want to transition quickly to Donovan Mitchell for the next 5 minutes or so, because I do believe it's a less likely chance he leaves than Zach LaVine. I definitely believe Zach LaVine is all the way out on Chicago, and I do believe he will actually be leaving relatively soon. Donovan Mitchell's an interesting one, because ever since Rudy Gobert received COVID-19 and quote-unquote gave it to his teammates, there's been this rift between him and Donovan Mitchell, and I don't think it's just because of the COVID-19 situation. I really do believe, who is the face of the Utah Jazz? It's Donovan Mitchell, 100%. Who is the best player on the Utah Jazz? Donovan Mitchell. I think Rudy Gobert wants more recognition, and I think Donovan Mitchell wants more recognition, and I think Donovan Mitchell wants to go to a bigger market. Donovan Mitchell was snubbed of Rookie of the Year, in my opinion, against Ben Simmons, and nobody really talks about him. Not a lot of All-NBA votes. Makes the All-Star team, but nobody really talks about Donovan Mitchell and the Utah Jazz. Put Donovan Mitchell on another bigger market team, his brand would explode. His dunks, his energy, 25 points a game, one of the best players, reminds me a lot of a young Dwayne Wade. Not that he's going to have the same career or same accolades or same records, anything like that. Just his physical play style reminds me a lot of Dwayne Wade, getting around the rim. I think he's a better three-point shooter, though. He's a great shooter as well. Him to the New York Knicks makes a lot of sense. Again, this is more of a segment about the Knicks, but the Knicks, again, are looking for another savior. Get Donovan Mitchell to New York, right? I don't know what the likelihood of this is happening, because, again, I don't think Donovan Mitchell would want to downgrade. That's the thing. Is Donovan Mitchell willing to leave Utah? If this is true, if the rift between Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell is so wide, right? And let's say the Jazz, for whatever reason, pick Rudy Gobert and they're going to move Donovan Mitchell to surround Gobert with shooters or something like that. Again, I don't think it's as likely. Where could he go? Like, where makes sense, right? And the thing I keep coming back to potentially, right? What if Donovan Mitchell would be willing to take a step back and go to a team like the Knicks or go to another team and become the face of their franchise and try to get to a bigger market? That is something interesting to me, not something I find likely. I want to give you a dark horse team for Donovan Mitchell. The Toronto Raptors. The Raptors need to make a big splash. They're falling into this area of a good team, but no one's talking about them ever since Kawhi left. They need to replace that Kawhi face of the franchise mold. It makes a lot of sense to me for them to go after, the Toronto Raptors to go after a Victor Oladipo, a Bradley Beal, a Zach LaVine, and even a Donovan Mitchell makes a lot of sense to me. Donovan Mitchell would make a ton of sense. In Toronto, I could see it. What would a trade package look like? Fred VanVleet, some picks as well. Try to hang on to Pascal Siakam. A dynamic duo of those two could put you back at the top of the Eastern Conference. Again, the Knicks, I still think are a favorite for all four of these guys. Again, I never like to put the Knicks as a favorite for free agents, but for Oladipo, I think the Knicks are not going to get him. No chance in hell. Even Bradley Beal, I think he's more likely to go to a team like the Heat. They've been a lot of interest. But for Zach LaVine in particular, and maybe even Donovan Mitchell if he wants out, if the Knicks are willing to part with a top 3 draft pick, they could really secure a guy, specifically Zach LaVine. But the Donovan Mitchell situation is also going to be interesting, to monitor throughout the future. Because how big is that rift between the Jazz, Rudy Gobert, and Donovan Mitchell? Is it legit? Would he potentially want out? It's a really interesting situation and worth keeping an eye on. All right, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side of the break, I'm going to be talking about the New England Patriots, Tom Brady's former team, and how they're losing a lot of players due to the opt-out, due to health concerns, and why the Patriots might not be as good as some people believe, and maybe even as I believe. Also, I'm going to quickly talk about next segment, Joey Bosa's massive extension with the Chargers. What does it mean for them? What does it mean for him? Did it reset the market again? And are the Chargers going to be able to keep up with the Chiefs and the Broncos in their division? What are they missing? Could Justin Herbert deliver it for them? I'm going to talk quickly about the Chargers, but mostly about the Patriots in the next segment. And we're going to be right back after this break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right. And we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, thank you so much for listening, and I am Alex Masfer. I just finished talking about Donovan Mitchell and Zach LaVine and really the New York Knicks, on how the Knicks could potentially get 2 of those guys and why those 2 guys are potentially the next NBA superstars or stars to leave their teams and go somewhere else. And I also talked about how the NBA has really mastered the offseason aspect of everything. Speaking of offseason, we are still in the NFL offseason, and some big news has been happening recently. So the NFL came out and said that the deadline is rapidly approaching of when you can drop out of this season, obviously respectfully due to your health concerns or your family and things like that. And a lot of Patriots players have dropped out, specifically 2 of their best defensive players. Patrick Chung, they're starting, I think, strong safety, and Donta Hightower is the big one. He is the best linebacker on the team now. And when you look, and now he's gone, obviously, like, no shade towards them. Do what you have to do for your family and for your health. Absolutely respect it. And thank God that the NFL is allowing players to drop out and still get at least some of their money back. But the Patriots, again, so I was started off high when Cam Newton signed there. I thought that the Patriots were definitely going to be a 10-win team and win that division, a 9 or 10-win team and win that division. Then I did a deep dive on their schedule and I realized, oh my God, they have the hardest schedule in the league. And I think maybe one of the hardest schedules I've ever seen in NFL history. Seriously. About teams that they have to face. I mean, teams again like the Seahawks, the 49ers, the Chiefs, and the Ravens all on their schedule. And those are just some of the games, not all of them. Those are like 4 auto losses for any team, in my opinion. 4 of the top, I think, 5 teams they have to face. Ridiculous stuff, right? Now, after already losing a lot of people in the offseason, guys like Kyle Van Noy, Chandler Jones, a bunch of other players, Tom Brady, obviously, as well, And I've mentioned this about the Patriots, in not a single area of their football team did they improve in the offseason. To no fault of their own, they didn't have a lot of cap space and a lot of players just decided to leave. That was tough, but they didn't improve through the draft either, in my opinion, selecting like a safety out of a D2 school. I didn't necessarily agree with that pick. And now to have Donta Hightower leave after Kyle Van Noy already left, and one of the strengths of the Patriots core is how good their linebackers are, blitzing wise. That's tough, man. And again, I understand that they've gotten most of their secondary back, Stephon Gilmore, J.C. Jackson, and the McCourty twins as well. But can that carry an entire defense? I'm not as confident as the New England defense as I was beforehand. And I was already getting kind of more, pessimistic about them because, again, how hard their schedule is, right? And now they're at 8-8, right? Is what I predicted before these guys dropped out. Or, said they didn't want to play the season because of health concerns. I'm even lower on the Patriots now. I think that the Patriots, seriously, they might only win 5 or 6 games this year, folks. I mean, how depleted their defense is. Plus, with the lack of training camp and reps and preseason, who knows what Cam Newton's really going to look like in this new system. Again, I don't like to bet against the Patriots because, again, Bill Belichick is the greatest coach in football history, and it's really hard to bet against that. And again, I know he'll coach the defense up to some remnants of what it was, but if the defense isn't even as good as it was last year, and the offense is worse than it was last year as well, and they went, kind of ass backwards into the playoffs last season, it's hard for me to envision them winning 9 or 10 games. I was already saying they're going to win 8. I'm going to bump it down to 7 now. I think the Patriots are only going to win 7 games this year, and I think a max they can win next year is 8-8. I don't think they can win more than 8 games next year, and I think they have a floor of 5-11. They could seriously only win 5 games. And, maybe that's good for the Patriots if they only win 5 games this year. They take their licks this season, they go get Justin Fields or Trey Lance, because Trevor Lawrence is going to go to the Jaguars are going to win like 0 games for him. They have more for, cap space and a lot of picks next offseason, and they just take a retool year and a rebuild year. If there's a year to do that, it's this year with no fans in the stands because of COVID, no preseason, lack of practices, a lot of excuses you could say. This would be the year to do it. And there's some other sportscasters that, have, a theory that, the Patriots are going to tank and everything like that. The Patriots aren't tanking. Bill Belichick doesn't want to have a worse season than Tom Brady this year. Because again, then people will be like, oh, it's more Tom than Bill during that great Patriot dynasty. Things like that matter to Bill Belichick, right? Again, though, I just don't see it with this team. I really don't. And again, I don't like to bet against the Patriots because, again, the greatest coach in football history, maybe sports history, is coaching that team. And it's hard to bet against them. But I'm looking at teams now in the AFC East, right? The Bills should have this division locked up, but again, I don't trust the Buffalo Bills because I don't trust Josh Allen. I just don't. Josh Allen is a terrible quarterback in my opinion. I'll talk about it on the tier list as well. I also talked about how he made the top 100 and I didn't agree with it. I got a 27% chance last year that Josh Allen threw an uncatchable football. I don't understand how you can, take that and win a Super Bowl with that, right? Or consistently win a division with that. He hasn't even won a division yet. But again, do you trust the New York Jets with everything going on with them to win that division? No. Do you trust the Dolphins who have a ton of rookies this season? A completely almost new team, again, with those lack of practices, lack of everything? They have a talented roster now, in my opinion. But again, year 2 in the Brian Flores system. When is Tua going to start? How is his health going to look? I don't necessarily trust them either. So I think this division might be the worst in football this year. I'm going to say that the Bills win this division at 9-7. I really do believe they're going to take a step back from last season, but still win the division. And I have the Dolphins second in this division, going 7-9, 8-8, similar to the Patriots. Again, the only way that the Dolphins really take that next step, in my opinion, and win this division is all on Tua Tagovailoa. When is he going to start? If he's going to start week 1, what if Tua, starts week 1 and is great, just like Deshaun Watson was his rookie year, Carson Wentz was his rookie year, Andrew Luck was his rookie year. If he has one of those rookie years where he can propel a team to the playoffs, then I could see the Dolphins winning, 9, 10 games and making it to, the division lead, but I just don't see that happening with Tua. I think he's going to take a little bit of time to get acclimated. They're going to be careful with him because of his health and everything like that. But again, this division is just terrible, man. It's definitely the worst in football. And, the Patriots only got worse, and now I think they're only going to win 7 games. I think the Dolphins will win 7 or 8. The Bills are probably going to win 8 or 9, and the Jets are going to win, 6 or 7? Like, everyone's just going to be in this mediocre range, and I think the Bills will win it, but man, this division is terrible. Everyone, the AFC East has been terrible for years, right? It's just been Tom Brady and the Patriots, getting 5 or 6 auto wins, essentially from their division every single year. And of course, the Jets had their moments, and the Dolphins had their moments, and the Bills had their moment last year, right? Every once in a while, they get a team that wins 9 or 10 in that division. but consistently it's been bad, and this year it doesn't look good at all. Again, the Jets are going to be terrible. The Patriots, I don't see it with them, man. I just don't see it. After losing Dante Hightower, Kyle Van Noy, Patrick Chung, guys on the defensive line, guys on the offensive line, Tom Brady, right? How many players can you lose and not upgrade them with better players, or even replace them with, Marcus Cannon also opted out as well as starting right tackle. How many backups can you throw in there and then just add Cam Newton, who hasn't really played in the last year and a half, until you realize that this team just isn't going to be good with the hardest schedule in the league? They're just not going to be good, folks. I hate to say it, but the Patriots are not going to be a good football team this year. And again, I don't like betting against the Patriots because of Bill Belichick, but this year, I just don't see it. I want to transition quickly to the Chargers, the second biggest team in LA, who signed Joey Bosa to a massive extension. Now, and I don't disagree with the extension at all. Joey Bosa is one of the best pass rushers in the league. He's also one of the few elite pass rushers who's also elite as a defensive run stopper as well. He just reset the defensive end market yet again. Absolutely deserves it. Absolute stud. And I've talked about this with the Chargers. The Chargers have a Super Bowl roster. They have one of the most talented rosters in the league, specifically on the defensive end. Where did the Chargers screw up? Again, I've talked about this a little bit. I want to expand on it for the next 5 or so minutes. The Chargers screwed up when they didn't land Tom Brady. The Chargers did not make the right decision, in my opinion, going with the Justin Herbert route either. Here's what the Chargers need. The Chargers need a face of the franchise at the quarterback position. Because they got everything else. They have a tight end, Hunter Henry. They have a good offensive line now that they got some guys in free agency and traded for one as well. They have good receivers, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. They have a good running back, Austin Eckler. They have 2 good defensive ends, Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram. A good linebacking core. A good secondary led with Derwin James. Ton of good corners, right? I think they have a decent enough coach in Anthony Lynn, who was taking a team to, I believe, was it the AFC Championship game? Or maybe the second round with Phillip Rivers, right? And lost to the Patriots that year. They just need the quarterback. They were legitimately a quarterback away. Similar to how Tampa Bay, I think, was a quarterback away. Maybe even more than Tampa Bay. The Chargers were really a quarterback away. They have Tyrod Taylor, who I think will be an upgrade over Phillip Rivers. The Phillip Rivers of last year, I should say. Again, I think they need more of a mobile quarterback. But what do they need? They need a face of the franchise and a guy who can take them to the playoffs. Again, they're in a tough division. The Kansas City Chiefs are the best team in football, in my opinion, and I really do believe the Denver Broncos are the pop team this year. I think they're going to double their win total. I think they're going to win 9 or 10 games. I love Drew Lock. I love KJ Hamler. I love all those guys, and I really do believe that they're going to double their win total, right? So on top of that, how can the Chargers compete? Not to mention that, the Raiders are moving to Las Vegas, have John Gruden, Josh Jacobs, Mike Mayock, Darren Waller, guys on the defensive front as well. And they might be getting a new quarterback next offseason, in my opinion, as well, who's going to be better than Justin Herbert. I think Trey Lance, obviously Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields are all better prospects than Justin Herbert was. Justin Herbert just doesn't scream Super Bowl winning quarterback to me. He doesn't scream face of the franchise. What should the Chargers have done after they struck out on struck out on Tom Brady? They should have signed Cam Newton. I believe that. Cam Newton in the Anthony Lynn system, mobile, stretch the pocket around, face the franchise, would love to live in Los Angeles, right? Would attract fans in a year where the Rams, I think, are going to rebuild this year or retool a little bit, right? That would have been the play, in my opinion. And again, Justin Herbert is a good prospect, but again, I've talked about this. The difference between arm talent and arm strength. Josh Allen has arm strength. Justin Herbert has arm strength. And the way I view Justin Herbert is just a little bit more accurate version of Josh Allen. Again, he's athletic, he's huge, and he's got a big arm. Everyone says, oh my God, look at his big arm. Who gives a rip if he can throw the ball far if he can't hit wide open receivers? Justin Herbert, just like Josh Allen in college, was struggling with the little stuff. I think Justin Herbert was a better prospect than Josh Allen. Obviously went to Oregon, not Wyoming, won the Rose Bowl, did a little bit more things there. But not to mention, the Oregon offense didn't trust Justin Herbert with the ball. They were a run-dominant team. And now the coach comes out and he's like, oh, it's nothing with Justin. Justin's the best quarterback I've ever seen, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, you wanted to run the ball more than you want to pass the ball, despite having a really good NFL quarterback supposedly on your team. Justin Herbert can throw the ball wicked far. He's a huge person. He's like 6'6". He can run. He's athletic. Everything's great about that. It doesn't matter if you can't throw the ball with accuracy. Justin Herbert so many times missed simple 5-yard outs, 7-yard digs, 10-yard slants. Things like that matter. And sure, he'll have a couple of flashy plays where he flicks the ball 60 yards and maybe the receiver catches up to it and gets it. But again, that doesn't translate to the NFL, which is why I think he's actually going to see the field last. Besides Jordan Love, who I'll talk about in my next segment, I think Tua is going to get on the field before Justin Herbert will get on the field. Joe Burrow certainly will as well. And that's a problem. Justin Herbert, to me, again, doesn't screen this face of the franchise mentality. Neither does Tyrod Taylor, by the way, either. Tyrod Taylor could maybe get them to 7 or 8 wins, but that's not going to cut it in a division with the, defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, the Broncos who are going to win 9 or 10 games next year, if not more, and the Raiders who I think are getting there. I think they really are. They have all this draft capital. Henry Ruggs. If Derek Carr can, be better than he's been, I think he's already been pretty good, then who knows what the Raiders could do. And if they get a guy like a Justin Fields, goddamn, how good could they be? Right? The Chargers are just constantly falling behind, in my opinion. Again, when they struck out on Tom Brady, that's what they were missing. That was the key for them. Again, I love the Joey Bosa signing. I love their defense. I love their talent. I think they're a great overall roster. And I like their GM, and I like their head coach, too. I like Anthony Lynn. I think he's a good one. I just don't like their quarterback. And if you don't have a quarterback in this league, you're not going to do jack squat. And they don't have a quarterback. They have... maybe Justin Herbert proves me wrong, but his mechanics are flawed. His footwork is flawed. He doesn't have throw with accuracy. Can't throw with touch either. All he does is throw fastballs. He can't throw with touch. Those things are critical things in the NFL today. And I don't love his decision making either. Those things are what drive NFL quarterbacks nowadays. This isn't the 90s. This isn't the early 2000s where you wanted the biggest, strongest guy, the Jay Cutlers, the Jamarcus Russells. You don't want them anymore. They're not working anymore. You want the accurate guy. And that's not what Justin Herbert is. And that's what Joe Burrow is. That's what Tua is. And that's what's going to obviously make the Chargers pay. That's what Tom Brady is, by the way, too. Even Cam Newton is accurate in some sense more than Justin Herbert will be, in my opinion. Again, that's where they messed up. But I like the Joey Bosa signing. He deserves it. And it's only going to get bigger and bigger for defensive ends, as they seem to be the second most important position in football. I think everyone has kind of agreed on. It goes quarterback, defensive end. That's what you want. If you can have 2 cornerstones there, your franchise defensive end and your franchise quarterback, you'll be set and you'll win games here for a long time. All right, we're going to take another break. On the other side of it, Aaron Rodgers had a really interesting quote about Jordan Love. What does it mean and how I'm telling you, Aaron Rodgers is going to lead the Packers in the next 2 years. Some teams that he could potentially go to. I've talked about it before. I'll talk about it again. Go a little bit more in depth. Some teams that could potentially Aaron Rodgers could go to. And I'll talk about this really interesting quote he had on Jordan Love. We'll get all into that right after this break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I'm Alex Masfer. Thank you so much for tuning in. I just finished talking about the Joey Bosa extension for the Chargers, and also a lot of Patriot players are opting out of the season due to health concerns, and why I believe they're just not the same team I thought they could have been right when the Cam Newton signing happened. I want to transition now to Aaron Rodgers. Now, I've talked about Aaron Rodgers a lot on this show, just like everybody does with their own sports shows as well. And what I've talked about is how I'm not necessarily sure that Aaron's going to finish his career in Green Bay after the Jordan Love draft pick. Now, you can go back and forth on that, and I've come to the conclusion, and then I'm now predicting, and I'm almost guaranteeing, that Aaron Rodgers is going to leave the Packers in the next 2 seasons, if not as soon as after this upcoming year. He's recently spoke on the Jordan Love draft pick. I'm paraphrasing here, but some of the highlights of the really long quote were, when I was, quote unquote, when I was watching the draft, I was looking to see what type of receivers were available, and he mentioned some names like Justin Jefferson and some others. And he said once he got the text that they picked Jordan Love, he said, I turned to alcohol for the night. I turned to liquor for the night. It was a tequila type of night. So, Aaron Rodgers, well, I think he was being playful and maybe even a little bit sarcastic. I think it came from a place of legitimate how he felt, like legitimate feelings and how he felt on draft night. Aaron Rodgers 100% wanted a receiver on draft night. No doubt about it in my mind. He was looking at guys like Justin Jefferson, maybe even trading up for a guy like Jerry Jeudy, things like that. And in the entire draft, this draft class for wide receivers was one of the greatest in NFL history, and some people consider it the greatest draft class, the most stacked wide receiver draft class in NFL history. The Green Bay Packers, whose biggest need is wide receiver, getting Aaron Rodgers more help besides just Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones, did not draft a single receiver. Instead, they went Jordan Love and then A.J. Dillon, who's a power back. Now, I want to talk about some things for just some context. Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur seemed to be like a good pairing at the beginning, right? Everybody thought that Matt LaFleur was a young, offensive-minded, progressive head coach, and that could really get along with Aaron and let Aaron kind of do his thing. Over time, we found out that Aaron has always been a quarterback that likes to off-script, kind of do his own things, not necessarily follow the playbook. If you ask me, what does Matt LaFleur like to do as an offense, I think it's very similar to Kyle Shanahan, which is a lot of different ways to run the ball and scheming guys open, which means not needing to have the highest paid wide receiver. Instead, you scheme guys open and you game plan with the run game as well, and you take a lot of big shots and a lot of big plays. Aaron Rodgers, these past couple of seasons, hasn't necessarily been taking those big shots and those big plays. He's been taking less and less of them each year, and this year he actually led the league in throwaways. Meaning when the play breaks down, instead of trying to take a risk and make a big play for your team, he tends to throw away the ball more often, which is really interesting because Aaron Rodgers, specifically at the beginning of his career, was known as almost kind of like Superman, kind of like how Patrick Mahomes is now, where no matter where Aaron Rodgers is on the field, no matter how bad the play looks, Rodgers can always make something out of nothing. And he's been throwing the ball, away more recently, and I don't know what it is. I think it might be protecting his legacy a little bit. He doesn't want to make more bad plays, more mistakes, because some of the things that Aaron Rodgers has when you talk about all-time greats, right? What is everybody's signature thing? Peyton Manning is his football IQ, Tom Brady's his accuracy and mentality, and obviously championships as well. Dan Marino is obviously his arm. And I think that the big thing with Aaron Rodgers is that he just doesn't turn the ball over. It's something that's completely unexplainable. I think all the all-time greats have unexplainable things about them. Again, Dan Marino has an elastic arm. How can he make these throws, right? Tom Brady, what is his mentality? Why is it like that? Why is he always so driven? That's unexplainable. And Russell Wilson, how does he never get hit? Why does he never, ever take a sack or ever get hit despite all of his running around, right? For Aaron Rodgers, is how the hell does he have one of the best arms of all time, and he throws the ball 40 times a game, and he never turns the ball over? I think that's Aaron Rodgers' little unexplicable stat, and I think he's protecting that, right? He's also, got the statistic of the greatest quarterback passer rating of all time. I think Russell Wilson will pass it, but who knows, maybe that also plays a factor. And maybe he just doesn't agree with the play calling, right? Now, what Matt LaFleur said in this offseason, which was really interesting in particular, was we need to take more big plays. We need to take more risks, was what he was saying, right? This is pre-draft, right? So in my head, I was like, oh, great. They're going to get Aaron some more, weapons, and then Rodgers will be able to throw the ball downfield more and take those more risks. Instead, they take Jordan Love, who's a young, hungry quarterback who wants to prove himself, who might have gone a little bit lower than people expected. Some people had him going top 15. I think he went all the way to 26 to Green Bay, right? So maybe he's more, hungry, driven, and, Jordan Love in college was all about risks, right? He was throwing a lot of picks, but also throwing a lot of touchdowns, throwing for a ton of yards, carrying Utah State. The ultimate risk-taker quarterback, in my opinion, is pro comparison is Ryan Fitzpatrick, with a floor. I think that's his floor, right? I think the worst we're going to see Jordan Love is, Jameis Winston / Ryan Fitzpatrick throw a ton of picks, but throw a ton of touchdowns. The best for Jordan Love could be, a Patrick Mahomes, S-player, Drew Lock type build, elastic arm, making plays all around, things like that. Who knows how it'll be? Again, I don't think it'll happen for another year or two, but Aaron Rodgers didn't want to get the Aaron Rodgers treatment, right? Remember when Aaron Rodgers got drafted and replaced Brett Favre? I didn't think Aaron thought that was going to happen to him. I don't think they ever warned or briefed Aaron of, hey, we might be taking a quarterback this draft, at least early, in the first round. I mean, that's something, you don't draft a guy 26 to have him sit for 3 years, in my opinion. You just don't. And I really do believe that in the next 2 years or so, Aaron's going to want to move on. Again, he clearly was not happy with the draft pick. He's going to, I'm sure to the Green Bay media, he'll be like, oh, of course, I'm going to teach Jordan everything I know, blah, blah, blah. But deep down, and Aaron kind of showed in this Kyle Brandon interview, He did not want the Jordan Love pick. He wanted Justin Jefferson. He wanted a receiver. He wanted somebody to help him out in the passing game. And I think it's going to get to him, and I really do believe Aaron is now no longer going to finish his career as a Green Bay Packer. And there's one team in particular I think he's going to go to. I really, really do believe now at this point. I'm going to buy into this theory, and I hope 2 years down the line I'll be able to tell everybody I told you so. I really do believe Aaron Rodgers is going to finish his career as a Los Angeles Ram. I really do believe that. Now, I like the Rams. I am not a, personal favorite of the Rams, but I like their team. I really love Sean McVay. I think he's one of the best offensive minds in football, and I think he coached a really hard team last year, a team with a bunch of stars who were trying to get paid. It was a revolving door of players and offensive linemen, and he coached that team to a 9-7 record in one of the hardest divisions, if not the hardest division in football, right? I think that's something to be said for after a year of, losing to the Super Bowl in a not great way, right? So, I think Sean McVay is there for the long haul with the Los Angeles Rams, even if he has another bum year this year, if he doesn't make the playoffs, so considers a bum year, right? I think Jared Goff, on the other hand, isn't as secure, right? They're kind of moving away from that core of the people that, got them to that championship, right? Marcus Peters on that team. He's not there anymore. Eric Weddle was on that team. He's not there anymore. Clay Matthews was on that team. He's not there anymore. And Ndamukong Suh, Todd Gurley, right? You're kind of moving away from almost everybody on that Super Bowl team, right? Except Jared Goff and Robert Woods as well. But Jared Goff is the main one who is still there. Jared Goff is still a member of the Rams, right? I think he'll be the quarterback this year, and I like Jared Goff. I think he's a good player. Reminds me a lot of Matt Ryan. However, he's no Aaron Rodgers. And the problem with the Rams right now is that they don't have a good offensive line, and I don't think it's going to get solved rather quickly. Rebuilding an offensive line takes a couple of drafts, and it's hard to get good offensive linemen in free agency, so it takes longer than some other positional groups to really work up and build up, right? And if Jared Goff can't work with a poor offensive line, then it's not going to be happening for a couple of years, right? You know who can work with a poor offensive line? Aaron Rodgers. And if you can get him good weapons, he can make almost anything happen. And I really do believe Aaron Rodgers, who was, born and raised in California, went to UCal, just like Jared Goff, would love to play for his hometown Los Angeles Rams, even though, he wanted to be a San Francisco 49er, if you remember, during his draft. I think the Rams would be a really good second and really good fit for him. I've mentioned some other teams that could potentially go to him. The Los Angeles Chargers, if things don't work out for Herbert in the next 2 years. San Francisco 49ers, if, Jimmy Garoppolo has a big fall off. Chicago Bears is another team if he would want to stay in the cold weather and stay in division, but I doubt it. The Los Angeles Rams just make too much sense for me, okay? Jared Goff's guaranteed money is going to end after this year, which means they can cut him or trade him with minimal cap hit. In comparison, Todd Gurley had a ton of guaranteed money left, which is why when they moved on from him, when they cut him, kind of a terrible, always to getting that cap hit, right? In my opinion, after the Rams probably go 7-9 and 8-8 this year, right? One of those two. They have good players. Cooper Kupp's fantastic, one of the best receivers in the league. Robert Woods, Tyler Higbee, Cam Akers, who I think is a dark horse offensive rookie of the year candidate. I think he's going to be a stud. And you have some great defensive players as well. Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald. You just have to kind of rebooster that linebacking core, rebooster that secondary a little bit more, get Jalen Ramsey some help, and obviously redo the offensive line. But if you could trade Jared Goff to a team that is QB needy, looking for a bridge quarterback, even if a quarterback like Matt Ryan maybe retires, Jared Goff would be a great fit on the Falcons. I think him and Matt Ryan are almost identical players. And you could trade for an Aaron Rodgers. How much would he cost? I don't even know how much Aaron Rodgers would cost if Aaron demanded a trade out of Green Bay and Jordan Love has kind of emerged as the new guy. I think it would cost you a first round pick, which the Rams have had no problem in years past dealing, right? If you get Aaron Rodgers on the Los Angeles Rams, pair him with Sean McVay, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Cam Akers, who I think is going to be really nice. Again, on the defense, Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey and maybe some other guys you get in free agency or through the draft the next couple of seasons, you could really build something special again in Los Angeles. More of a sustainable winner than you had that one year you went to the Super Bowl. And I've talked about this with Sean McVay. Sean McVay needs to coach a team that is young, that is out of college, that is hungry. That are the type of guys that are going to love to play with Sean McVay, right? Not these superstars, right? Again, I think he should be doing that for almost every single positional group, specifically on defense, and have a couple of big names, right? Keeping Aaron Donald, obviously. Keeping Jalen Ramsey. And getting, you don't have to have a young, hungry quarterback, college guy at quarterback. You can bring in an Aaron Rodgers, obviously. He'll work, obviously. But, at the positional groups like running back, guys like Cam Akers, that offensive line, get some young college guys in there, even maybe some more receivers, right? But bringing in an Aaron Rodgers to Los Angeles would bring a whole new dynamic to the city, to the franchise, right? LA's always been about the big stars. The Lakers have LeBron freaking James. The Dodgers have Mookie freaking Betts. If the Los Angeles Rams could bring in Aaron freaking Rodgers, they would be competing with all of those other teams in Los Angeles. And it just makes a lot of sense for me, right? And also, the timing would work out really great for them as well, considering San Francisco, while they might continue to be good the next couple of seasons, eventually you're going to have to pay guys like Nick Bosa, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, a ton of other guys, Jimmy Garoppolo again on another contract, right? And they might not be the same team they are now. And who knows what the Seattle Seahawks are going to look like. I think their window is very short with this 1 year, and then they're going to have to pay people again. Obviously, what is Jamal Adams' contract going to look like? DK Metcalf will want a contract eventually, Tyler Lockett as well, and Russell Wilson's contract will eventually be up as well in the next 3 seasons. So maybe the timing works out perfectly, and again, I don't think it would cost the Los Angeles Rams a ton to get Aaron Rodgers 2 years from now when he's 37, 38, and he's looking to move on after Jordan Love has kind of established himself as Green Bay's future. I don't know, that's my theory on Aaron Rodgers and this quote. Again, I really think he was blindsided by this pick and wanted a receiver instead of Jordan Love, and I think he knows now that his future is not going to be in Green Bay, and I think the Los Angeles Rams make a ton of sense, and I think they could potentially have a quarterback opening as soon as after this season. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. Let me know what you guys think of my Aaron Rodgers to Los Angeles Rams theory. Alright, we're going to take one final break. On the other side of this short break, I'm going to be giving you my quarterback tier list in the NFL, breaking down almost all of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL, putting them in a category, and you guys will be able to let me know what you think. We're going to talk about all of that right after this break.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. For the last segment of today's show, I'm going to be giving you my quarterback tier list. I've talked a lot about this on my show, or on this show, that I host gracefully, consistently about how I have quarterbacks in different tiers and different categories, right? So I've always kind of never really done this, but I want to give you guys an exact tier list in each category, and I want to group each of these quarterbacks in. So I have each NFL team's starting quarterback. Now, if your team has a rookie quarterback, I have put him as your starting quarterback. That's just what I did, except for obviously like Philadelphia. But for the teams in the first round that drafted a quarterback besides Green Bay, so for Tua, Herbert, and Burrow, I had them as their starting quote-unquote quarterbacks. All right, so let's just get right into it. The first tier I have is below average. So these are guys who are, the first tier I have is below average, right? So a tier of, guys who are starting in the NFL, but I don't think they're good, and I think they will be replaced very, very soon. I only have 2 quarterbacks there. I have Dwayne Haskins and I have Phillip Rivers. I think Phillip Rivers is old and I think he's not aging well at all. I think he's the least athletic quarterback in the league and I think his arm is shot personally. I think he'll be decent for the Indianapolis Colts and I think he might win some games, but I think the sooner they can get Jacob Eason developed and in there instead of Phillip Rivers, that's what the GM Chris Ballard and Frank Wright are going to do in my opinion. I just don't see it with Phillip Rivers. He needs everything to go right and he might actually have that in Indianapolis considering how good their offensive, line is, but I just don't think he's great. And Dwayne Haskins, I think is good, but not a great player. I think he needs to work on a lot of things. I don't like his footwork. I don't like his mechanics. And I just don't think he has the greatest arm talent either. Wouldn't surprise me at all if the Redskins after this year are looking for a new quarterback. That's it for the below average category when it comes to starting NFL quarterbacks. All right, the tier just above that is unknown. So these are guys who it's just too early to tell if they're good or not. They're usually rookies. And I only have 3 guys for that one, and that's Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, and Joe Burrow. Who knows if they'll be good or not? It's impossible to predict, so I have them in the unknown tab. I'll just leave it at that. Now let's get into the average tab, all right? This is the biggest one, right? This is the one I talk all about, right? These are guys who are considered franchise quarterbacks, but in my opinion, do not elevate their teammates and are all benefits from the system. Don't make their teammates better. Their teammates make them better, all right? Let's get into it. Josh Allen. Was tempted to put him in the below average category, but he does have some athletic ability, and he's obviously translated to some amount of wins for the Bills, so I have him in the average category. Next up is Ryan Tannehill, who again I believe is just benefiting from the really good coach, really good defense, and really good weapons Tennessee Titans, but it obviously translates to some wins. Also, if you're in the average category, this isn't necessarily a knock. You obviously have had success, you're an NFL starting quarterback, you're getting paid a decent contract, and you translate to wins. I just don't think you elevate your teammates, if that makes any sense. Number 3 is Gardner Minshew. Same thing with everybody else, really. I just think he, is as good as the team around him. I think he's exciting. I think he's energetic. I think he's an accurate guy. But again, I think he's probably going to end up being replaced by Trevor Lawrence. Baker Mayfield's in here. I want to put Baker Mayfield in the good tier, but again, I need him to step up this season. I need a big bounce back year from him. Again, 22 touchdowns, 21 picks. You can't be in the good tier and throw that kind of number, so I put him in the average tier. Kirk Cousins is also there. I think Kirk Cousins is a really good player, throws a beautiful football, a great veteran leadership. Again, he doesn't have all the talent in the world, and he hasn't won a Super Bowl. He's just a good quarterback that plays for a good team, if that makes any sense. Matt Ryan's also in this tier as well, along with Nick Foles, 2 guys who I think are a little bit up there, but it can obviously translate to wins if with the right system and the right weapons around them. Jared Goff is also in here, along with Teddy Bridgewater, Cam Newton, Derek Carr. 3 guys who are, really good, get paid big money. Bridgewater's a good distributor of the ball. Cam Newton's athletic, but who knows what it'll be after his injuries. And I think Derek Carr is one of the most, just an average quarterback in this league, can win some games, won't be, big, beat the big teams, if that makes any sense. Won't beat the Chiefs consistently, but he'll, beat the bad teams. And the last person in the average category, which is going to get some heat, Dak Prescott's an average quarterback. I've talked about this before. Since his rookie year, he's pretty much a mediocre quarterback record-wise. I put him in the average tier. Again, say what you want about Dak Prescott. He doesn't deserve all that big money. I'm happy that the Cowboys didn't pay him because he does not deserve all that big money. And again, Dak does not make his teammates better. They make him better. That's why they constantly get him more offensive weapons instead of focusing on things like the defense and things like that. All right, next up is the good category. So these are guys who are franchise quarterbacks who I believe do elevate their teammates to some extent, but not at an elite level, right? So they elevate their teammates, but not at an elite level, all right? Those guys, I have 4 quarterbacks here. Number 1, Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones made the Giants better last year, guys. He had a better statistical season than Kyler Murray. We're not talking about it because he plays for the Giants, and the Giants were terrible last year. But again, he made them better. He made Slayton better. He made the offensive line look better. He made the entire team look better. Daniel Jones was a really good quarterback last year, and I think his potential is actually really high. I was wrong about him. I laughed when the Giants picked him. But again, I think Daniel Jones is really, really good. He had a great rookie season last year. He's in the good tier for me. Ben Roethlisberger is still in the good tier. I didn't put him in the tier above that, which is great because of that, that elbow injury. I just don't know what he's going to look like when he comes back. So I bumped him down to the good tier. Sam Darnold is a good NFL quarterback, folks. I don't care what any of you say. He's better than Josh Allen. He's really good. He throws a lot of picks. So what? So do a lot of quarterbacks in this league. They throw a lot of picks. But you know what happens at the end of the day? Sam Darnold makes his teammates better, and he puts the New York Jets in a position to win more times than he does not. I'm giving Sam Darnold the good tier. And finally, Jimmy Garoppolo is in here. I think he's a step above average. I think he elevates his teammates in some level. He's top 5 at multiple read plays. So when the play breaks down, do you elevate or do you shrink in under the pressure? A guy like Dak Prescott shrinks. Jimmy Garoppolo elevates and still finds the open guy. He's the final guy in the good tier for me. Next up is the great tier. So the great tier is a combination of guys who are borderline elite, either are borderline elite already or have the potential to be next season up there. The 2 potential guys I have here are Drew Lock and Kyler Murray. Again, I talked about this at length. I think they're 2 pop guys, could be the only 2 quarterbacks in this league who go from year 2 to MVP. They're really, really good players. I think Drew Lock is better than people are giving him credit for. He reminds me a lot of Patrick Mahomes. Won't be as good, obviously, but a similar play style. And Kyler Murray, obviously, we've talked about him at length, how he can make that Lamar Jackson jump. He's a special type player, in my opinion. The velocity he throws when he throws a football is incredible. He throws it like a baseball. So much fun to watch. Those 2 have potential to be elite players, which is why they're in the great tier. The other 2 guys are just really great NFL quarterbacks who I think are underrated. Matt Stafford, man. Nobody throws for more yards than him. He's absolutely incredible. If he wasn't on the Lions, he'd be, in the playoffs and could potentially get a Super Bowl. Somebody needs to free Matt Stafford and go trade for him. Put a good team around him, a good organization around him, and an easier division. Matt Stafford could take you far in the playoffs. And lastly is Drew Brees, who I think has lost a step since that elite tier. He's been knocked out of the playoffs a couple seasons in a row, so I have him in the good tier and not this final tier, which is elite. Next up is elite NFL quarterbacks. These guys elevate their teammates at a Super Bowl level, and they can win with bad coaching, bad weapons, bad offensive line, bad defenses. They still translate to wins. I'll go through this list quickly. Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, Carson Wentz, and Deshaun Watson, and as well, of course, Patrick Mahomes. Those guys are the best of the best quarterbacks in the league, in my opinion. Again, those guys, in my opinion, just at the very best, all they can do is win, and they can make anybody work. If there was another tier above that, which is like best of the best, it would just be Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion. Those 2 are the top 2 quarterbacks in the league. I understand people's argument with Carson Wentz that he doesn't stay healthy, but he is the one, right? Everyone talks about Dak Prescott, how good he is, how durable he is. How the hell did Carson Wentz win the division then with a terrible roster in comparison to the Cowboys? A terrible offensive weapon system. If you switch Carson Wentz and Dak Prescott roster-wise, right? If you put Dak Prescott on the Eagles and, Carson Wentz on the Cowboys are winning 14 games and going to the Super Bowl, and the Cowboys are winning and the Eagles are winning 6. If you switch those 2 guys. Carson Wentz is an elite quarterback in this league, folks. I don't know how some people don't see it. That is going to wrap it up for today's episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast. Again, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a 5-star review, and follow us on all those social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We would really appreciate it. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next episode.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.